You live, you die, is playing almost a cat and mouse game with her.
In September 2019, in Anchorage, Alaska, a woman handed a suspicious SD card to the police. The card was labeled Homicide at Midtown Marriott. She explained that she had found it lying on the street, and the label immediately made her suspicious. Understandably, the police examined the card's contents, fearing the worst. What they discovered was truly chilling. The card contained graphic images and videos of a murder. Over the top, the voice of the killer was gleeful.
You die. You die. Sadly, in my movies, everyone dies.
Where did the memory card really come from? Who was the victim, and who was the killer with a taste for making movies? This is the disturbing story of Brian Stephen Smith. First, let's discuss this woman, Kathleen Jo Henry. Kathleen Jo Henry, an Alaskan native born in 1988 in Bethel, Alaska, had a troubled history marked by divorce and run-ins with the law, including charges of drunkenness, assault, resisting arrest, and theft. Little is known about what led to her circumstances, but the day after Kathleen was released from prison in the summer of 2019, she appeared determined to make positive changes in her life. The SD card labeled Homicide at Midtown Marriott was handed to the police by Valerie Kassler on September 30th, 2019. Valerie reported finding it on the street in Anchorage, specifically in the less affluent Fairview neighborhood. It contained 39 images and 12 videos, all documenting the same incident, a graphic assault on one woman. Valerie watched the footage and immediately called the police upon realizing it was evidence of a murder. The videos were too graphic to display. The horrifying audio alone was enough to depict the gruesome crime scene. The killer appeared to treat the killing as a game, instructing the victim to gasp once for yes and twice for no in response to his questions. He expressed impatience with how long it was taking his victim to die as he strangled her, complaining that she was cutting into his drinking time. Valerie was horrified by what she saw in the videos. After a terrifying ordeal, the victim took her final breaths. The killer then placed her body on a luggage cart and took it outside to the parking lot. The final images on the SD card were date stamped September 6th and showed the woman lying face down on the bed of a pickup truck. The only distinguishing feature of the killer was his non-American accent. His face did not appear in the footage, and the victim's face was not easily identifiable in any of the media on the SD card. However, on October 2nd, 2019, a body was discovered at mile 108 of the Seward Highway. The victim had been so viciously attacked that identifying her took considerable time, but the police eventually determined she was Kathleen J. Henry. Who was the killer? This question remained unanswered. The police had only the killer's voice from the videos to go on. The accent in the recordings was South African. Coincidentally, the police had recently been in contact with a South African man regarding another matter and recognized his voice. This man was Brian Stephen Smith. Brian had served in the Army before immigrating to Alaska in 2013, where he worked a series of odd jobs, selling computer accessories and other electronics. Brian was married to Stephanie Bisland. Stephanie couldn't fathom the accusation that her loving husband had murdered someone. When the police arrived to search the couple's quiet suburban home, they spent 12 hours turning it upside down, looking for any further clues that would link Brian to the murder. He had a large collection of SD cards, which the police confiscated by the handful, searching for additional evidence similar to what Valerie had found in the street. However, none of the SD cards in Brian's collection at home were labeled in the disturbing and precise way that one had been: Homicide at Midtown Marriott. Brian had lots of weapons like knives and guns. The police took them. On October 8th, they caught Brian at the airport when he got back from a trip. Stephanie said the cops seemed to have been watching Brian for a while. His ex, Alicia, had told them about him a few times, even back in 2018 when she said he admitted to killing a woman. Although it remains unclear why the investigation didn't progress at that time, Alicia's accusation shed light on Brian's violent history, extending well before the murder of Kathleen Henry in September 2019. Stephanie couldn't believe it. The case against Brian seemed strong, but there was a problem. In cases like this, the police have to be sure where the evidence comes from. The first lead in the murder case was the SD card Valerie said she found on the street. But her story didn't add up. Valerie was a call girl living in a tent near a church. She often met Brian, who picked her up in his truck. One day in September 2019, Valerie needed money fast, so she stole Brian's phone. She later went through its contents, and that's where she found those videos. Valerie watched those videos and called the police as soon as she realized what she was watching was evidence of murder. When Brian was interviewed by the police, he sealed his own fate. He identified his own truck, shoes, and voice in the footage. He claimed he didn't remember the killing, but he accepted that it had been him. He denied he might be a serial killer. But then, when Brian was being escorted to the bathroom, He told an officer without prompting, "I'm going to make you famous." And when they sat back down in the interview room, he said, "You guys got some more time? You want to keep talking?" That's when Brian confessed to his second murder. Brian told police he had killed another woman named Veronica Bouch. Veronica was 53 years old. She was homeless and had been reported missing in February 2019. She was a mother, and her children all expressed their fears on Facebook. They were devastated when her body was identified in October 2019. The Abouch family was finally given closure, knowing what had happened to Veronica, but they needed justice as well. It was this murder, the killing of Veronica, that Brian had told his ex, Alicia Youngblood, about. Brian's murder of Kathleen and his confession to the murder of Veronica had both been caught on camera. In February 2024, it took the jury less than an hour to convict him on all accounts in both murders. Brian will be sentenced later this year. Because he was found guilty of an aggravating factor, the torture of Kathleen, he will be subject to a mandatory 99-year sentence. He'll be locked up and prevented from committing any more twisted murders. With his long history of picking up vulnerable women, his collection of weapons, and his interest in camera equipment, who knows what else Brian Steven Smith has done? What are your thoughts on this horrifying story? Is Brian a serial killer? And if so, how did his crimes go undetected until now? So if this was the disturbing story of Brian Steven Smith, follow for more true crime stories. I'll see you in the next video.